So welcome to everyone. So as she mentioned, we're going to be talking about Alabama Power and their success with the Archibus over the past, I guess probably say 8 years or so. First started back with this team 2014-ish, and so we've had a long journey, and we're excited to tell you a little bit about that. With us today, we've got Angela Corbett, who is the facility superintendent for Alabama Power. Rose Butera, who works with Angela, she's the power facilities coordinator. Julie Hooper, she's the project manager for Alabama Power. She works a lot with the space management issues and things of that nature. And then finally, rounding out the team is Ryan Tinsley, who's one of our senior application engineers here at IMAGINiT. And he's been heavily involved in this journey with the Alabama Power team and now the rest of the Southern Company family, pardon me. So a little bit about IMAGINiT before we get started. So IMAGINiT, we are a platinum partner for Archibus. We're a reseller of that product. In addition to that, we're also a platinum reseller for Autodesk. We're the largest reseller of Autodesk products and services in North America. And we think that those two together put us in a unique position where we're able to kind of tell the whole story from design through decommissioning of the built environment. We've got more than 40 years of experience, 35,000 customers scattered all across the U.S. and Canada. We're the largest service provider by far of the Autodesk team, and one of the largest Archibus resellers as well. We've got about 135 industry leading technical experts, dedicated support team of 16 people, customer advocates, and so we're really able to not only resell the software, help you get it configured, but support you when in times of need as well. So we've got a large footprint all over the U.S. With training centers, mobile laboratories, things like that. Also part of our team is Ascent, which is a dedicated team that creates training materials, specifically focused on Autodesk products. If you've ever taken an Autodesk course, more than likely, that's a product that came out of our Ascent group. I'd like to hand it off over to Rose, if we could. Rose, if you want to take the next spot.
Yes, Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is Rose with Alabama Power. I'm a facilities coordinator, and this is just a slide that gives some important facts about our company. Just tells that it was founded in 1906. We've got about 1.5 million customers, which are 6,085 of those are actual employees. 45,000 square mile of service territory. Energy sources are hydro, solar, wind, and biomass. Facilities scope of work is 479 substations and buildings, hydro dam and TO facilities, 320 corporate and division facilities. We have 799 total facilities. Average annual total work orders that we have are 67,653. On demand and preventative maintenance, on demand shows 48% of those work orders and 52% are preventative maintenance PMs. You can go to the next slide. And this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the way we were before Archibus, where we are now leveraging Archibus. We're going to talk about IMAGINiT's role in our success with Alabama Power, some of our challenges that we've went through, and some of the solutions to those challenges. Then we'll have a question and answer also after that. I'm going to pass it over to Angela Corbett.
Good afternoon. This is Angela. I am the Archibus coordinator for Alabama Power. I started here in 2018, so I joined the journey that they started with Archibus IMAGINiT in 2014. So I'm just going to go to the first slide, just kind of show you what we used to be. So in 2018, we went from 149 buildings to 799 buildings. So that was because of a facility footprint update. So we expanded what our responsible territories were, our locations. So anyway, we have corporate divisions, substations, and TOs that we manage. So in the past, we had a lot of disjointed ways that we had our customers report their facility requests. So that's been an evolution to get to where we wanted to be. But in the past, we had in our division locations, they would call the facility manager or the facility tech, or they might email them. We had a system at corporate, so it was disjointed. So that was before we got Archibus. We also had a lack of customer input into the facility request. We found that they didn't know the status of their request. They didn't know how to tell us if they were pleased or not with that process. And then we got some dissatisfaction and some just regular facility surveys. So we wanted to review that in our Archibus goals. We also had an antiquated facility and floor plan database because in the past we had a lot of things on Excel spreadsheets and shared drives and SharePoint and different things. And we had a software called CAMS, but it just didn't provide what we needed in our database. We also didn't have many metrics, and everybody needs metrics to evaluate performance and improve in things that they do. We also did not really utilize the mobile aspect or the web-based technology. So that's where we were in 2014, and then also in 2018 when we expanded that facility footprint. So since that time, where we are now, I think you went to the slide before, but where we are now on leveraging Archibus, now we have, for those 799 facilities, we have one centralized dispatch system. It's called our web portal, and I'll give you a display of that in a minute. We'll talk about our metrics. I'll show you some of our dashboards. We'll talk about how we, our goals in attempting to, make our facilities techs accountable. We added customer satisfaction surveys. We added a QR code. We've also implemented a monthly newsletter called Archibus Tips. We have improved our safety just initiatives and trying to get that into Archibus. And I'll talk about those and show you that in a few slides. We have problem types, and we have a centralized dispatch system that, depending on the problem type or the location, is to where it gets dispatched. We also just, actually on Monday, we will be rolling out a conference room reservation system that we will be utilizing Archibus for. We also have a tailored facility database that we did not have before. So Archibus, what we call Archibus out of the box, is a regular that that can go to different companies, but we were able to tailor it to Alabama Power or to utility use. We also were able to integrate AutoCAD into Archibus. So we'll go to the next slide, and I will show you what we're very excited about is the web portal. So any customer, any of those 6,085 employees that we have out there, they can submit a facility request through this form. So they go to a URL and they put in their name, and all we want to know is their location, the description, submit, and they've got a work order number. If they are not connected to our Alabama Power server, they do get a landing page, what we call a landing page, where it tells you if you're not connected to call our BOC dispatch number, which is our customer folks that are answering the phones for the entire state for facility requests. So on the next slide, we're going to show you a video of it, and I'll just let you see it in process. And this is something that IMAGINiT worked with us on a concept of what we wanted, and they tailored it to our needs. So right here you see that they're going to the Southern Company website. They're putting in facilities.alabamapower.com, and that is what our customers would save that as their favorite so that they can go to it anytime. So once they've entered it in one time, it's their favorite and they just go to it. So right now you'll just see that we have a unique NTID for every employee. So once you open that, you can filter it by your employee code or your first name or your last name, depending on, even your phone number. So that allows us to get that email address by having this downloaded from our HR system, because that's downloaded every night. We have the latest data of employees. So the phone number pops up after you see the name that you've selected from our HR database, basically. Then we want to know, well, where's your problem? What location are you? So you see we have different divisions, but for instance, right now we're looking at corporate north or corporate south, and that is our building in Birmingham, which is about 1.3 million square feet for our campus. So this is where they would just request the work, and they can also add pictures if they like. If there's a certain thing that they want to show us that's a picture's worth 1,000 words, then they send that, and then we get that unique 6-digit work order number. So at that point, the customer is going to get an email notifying them that they got, that email is theirs, and so they can reference that. And then throughout the process of the work request, once a technician picks it up, they also get an email notifying them that, hey, somebody's on their way. And then once it's completed, they get another email that says it's completed. So that was a lot of the things that we wanted to accomplish when we were, had our goals for what we wanted to have our customers be able to do to be involved in the process. So another thing after the web portal is our facility database. So you can tell from this that we have divisions, we have corporate headquarters, we have substations, we have TO sites, which stands for Technology Organization. So we have a lot of the different things. So in order to make it easier to classify where you are and where you're requesting work, we've got them separated into sites. So that's what you see on the left. And then you can tell how many buildings are in those sites. And then once you click on them, there's addresses. So we've got a great database for all of that. We also implemented a QR code. So if you scan on that QR code, like you see routinely now on commercials, you see the QR code. So when you do that, you go immediately to that web portal URL. So that's easy to see. Then the third thing on this slide is our survey. So if you've ever taken a survey from some companies, you might get 3, 4, 5 emails. We wanted it to be as simple as possible, that you pick one of 3 smiley faces, in 2 seconds, click it, and, that's it. Now, if you want to add comments, you can, but we wanted it to be as simple as possible for them. So, again, worked with IMAGINiT on implementing that, tailoring it to what we wanted, and so that's some of the improvements. On the next slide, we have a pretty large department of facility techs, and they're all over the state now since 2018, since we expanded our facility footprint. So it's a little harder to talk to folks, in Mobile or Eufaula sometimes. So I decided that maybe we just put together a newsletter. So every month there's a newsletter that I create, and I've gotten a little better over the years because I can now add pictures and things like that. But what I try to talk about in that newsletter is if we've made improvements to the system, or if we're going through an upgrade, or maybe it's training, like here's how to add time to a work order, or a procedure change, or sometimes we talk about safety and how that's incorporated into Archibus. Sometimes we throw in some department news, like a new employee and say, welcome to Archibus, things like that. So we do find that the enhanced communications keeps the technicians hopefully on board and engaged every month in that facility software. There's all kinds of communications that you can do. You can do facility contact sheets. The more you put in there, IMAGINiT will work with you to tailor reports, anything that you need. So that's the communications part is, to me, a crucial part of Archibus, because if you learn Archibus, you have to stay in it and you have to stay engaged and, make it the tool that you want it to be. So on the next slide, we have our problem types. And this is something that we came up with so we could channel the work into different types. So it helps us because if we can figure out how many work orders are HVAC, or how many are electrical, or how many are plumbing, for instance, then we know what kind of tech that we need. So we're classifying our work orders, by that type. We also have some general things that, a lot of things don't go into categories, but we try to keep everything that we do, whether it's preventive maintenance or on demand, we try to keep it in those problem types. And you have to assign that problem type before you can complete a work order. So on the next slide, you can see the slide before had the problem types. So because we have those, we can run reports and have the metrics that we need to show, well, how much money did we spend on HVAC? So in those two circle graphs, so that is for our corporate headquarters, but we have those graphs for, our divisions and everything else. But this lets us know that, for instance, in corporate, we had 492 work orders on HVAC, which is in that green pie. And then the total cost was $641,850. So what we're doing is we're adding up the invoices that we bring in from our accounting system. We're adding the labor, internal labor costs that we get from Archibus based on how many hours the technicians work on things. And then if we have a contractor and we have external labor, we add that to this graph, and we can integrate all of this information into one and know how much we're spending total on HVAC or janitorial or anything like that. And then on the left side, it just shows you all of the different sites. So, we have a graph of those each month, and we can show total cost and things based on the metrics that Archibus provides. The next slide is our customer surveys. So this was really important to me because I felt like, the customers really wanted to let us know how they were doing. In the past, they did not have a work order number. They just called a number or they emailed somebody. They couldn't call back and reference something. They couldn't tell us anything. So we really liked the surveys. And here's an example of it. So we have just various categories. You either did not meet expectations, you did meet them, or you exceeded them. So on those surveys where somebody did not meet expectations, we programmed it so that that survey would immediately go to that facility tech and to that superintendent to hopefully clarify and get with that customer immediately. Because if a customer thinks about it for about a month and you didn't check on them, sometimes it's just a miscommunication. And because it's an immediate notification that you got a negative survey, then you can potentially solve that problem. The other surveys, it's a great way for performance metrics for your techs. You can do all kinds of comments and pass those on and talk about them in team meetings of different attaboys that were provided on the surveys. We also do like the fact that, and again, this was IMAGINiT helping us do that, but when we have ideas of what we want to see, they will tailor it to what we want. So we didn't want our technicians to be kind of lumped in the same category as our contractors. So we were able to split that up so that we can make sure that the contractors, have their surveys, and then we can discuss that with them as needed. We also have top requesters. There's all kinds of dashboards that we use that we have displayed in the department. We can see who the top requesters are for any given month. Any of the data that you want, IMAGINiT can, build you a report for it, and then you can pass it on. So really like the surveys. On the next slide, this is another report. This is basically a combination of 4 or 5 reports that has evolved since I've been in this role of Archibus coordinator. I'm also a facility superintendent, and I have 11 of my own techs. So I see, the maintenance integrate with Archibus, on a daily basis because my guys use Archibus. So the first thing that you see is hours by Craftsperson per month. So this pretty much holds the maintenance tech accountable that, hey, if you're here 40 hours a week, then you should be, 40 hours a week should be in your time. Now, we don't match it to the time card, but we do, expect them to have between 140 and 180 hours a week, depending on a month, depending on overtime or depending on vacation. We just like to, show that time is being accounted for. That next category is something that we don't think is a sole indicator of performance, but it does help us evaluate trends. Craftsperson performance. The craftsperson is an Archibus word. We call them usually, maintenance technicians or things like that. But I say craftsperson now all the time because I've been in Archibus so long. But this shows you how many hours they worked and how many assigned, how many completed, and then it gives you an average hours per request. So obviously sometimes that's going to be skewed if somebody's on projects and things, but if you look at over months and months and compare it from team to team, from work team to work team, then you can see trends. Also, you can look at the survey detail. You can see that you can get those satisfaction notes, and that's what we share with our different work teams because we have 30 work teams in the state. So we have a Western division and a Southern division and a corporate headquarters. We have security work teams. So there's a lot of different teams that work is being dispatched to. So every work team is going to have this report kind of as a metric to their team for the month. And then that last one is an indicator of, you've got work orders that are past due 30 days or more. Our standards are for an on-demand work order that comes into our system. We want them to pick that up in 2 days, 2 business days, and make sure that they're in contact with the customer. Because again, we do have 6,085 employees spread, across the state. So a lot of travel time is involved sometimes too. So anyway, that's just a combination of some of the reports that IMAGINiT can get you and do whatever you really want to do. That next slide is dashboards, permits, and safety metrics. So in our department, we have 7 dashboards. So we have a few at corporate, we have a few at another large building we call the Energy Center. We have them in different areas in the building. So that dashboard allows you to see, different things, like you can walk through and see how many work orders are coming in. You can walk through and see what contractors are in the building. So that second thing that says work permit, it's a safety metric, but it's also an awareness. So today, actually, we had a fire drill at our office, and this is a multi-story building. We do it every year, and this permit allows us to keep up with all the contractors that are in the building. So any given day, you can look at that dashboard, or you can know that if a fire occurs, you know that there's a contractor on the 17th floor north or 6th floor south. We know if they're working with fire equipment, if they're working in other ways. So that's a good thing to have, and again, another asset to Archibus. Also, when we have those contractors check in and check out, we can compare their time on the work. When we get an invoice, we can verify that they were indeed in the building because they checked in and checked out. So all kinds of reports that you can do. And then lastly, on safety, Alabama Power strives to be a safe environment for all of our employees. It's one of our core values. And so we decided to ensure that on every work order that we ask the question, have you done a job safety briefing before you do that work order? Whether it's a PM or whether it's an on-demand, we try to do that. So if they have to check the box to say they did it. So it's a conscious thing of incorporating safety into it. And again, this is an example of IMAGINiT working with us and showing us, what we could do. And it really helps to have them and have that relationship with them, because once they get to know you, they get to know your business, then it's easier for them to help you tailor reports. So that's very important with having the vendor and being in such close contact with them. And then the next slide is the last slide for me, and then we're going to jump over to our space planning. But like I said earlier, we are starting on Monday, actually. We're going to incorporate Archibus into our reservation system of conference rooms. We did have another system that we were using, and we decided that, Archibus works so good on these other applications that we use, so we're now going to be doing the room reservations. So we will be piloting that at our corporate headquarters starting Monday. And that, again, is something that the vendor worked with us a lot on tailoring to that. And before I pass it over to Julie, I just want to say a big thanks to Ryan Tinsley. He is our dedicated engineer, and Fulton works with Julie, so I'll let her put a plug in for him. But having Ryan and having that close relationship with him and having that expert opinion, being able to almost read your mind sometimes, to answer the little questions, the big questions, it's very important. And so we really appreciate the relationship we have with them, with all the folks at IMAGINiT, but Ron is our main contact, and we appreciate him very much. So I am going to pass it over to Julie to talk about the CAD information.
Thanks, Angela. I appreciate that. And the slides you're looking at now, from a property services standpoint, we at Alabama Power have project managers that basically make sure everyone has somewhere to work, whether it's an office, a cube, any sort of construction projects outside the power plant walls. That's what the Property Services Department does, and we, of course, support maintenance and do what we can do to help the buildings to provide the infrastructure for the buildings so that maintenance can take care of it. So we had a lot at the beginning of all this. before we went down this road, we had drawings of every fathomable. We had paper, we had AutoCAD, we had Intergraph drawings, DWG drawings, DNG drawings, and then original blueprints. So buildings all over the state and multiple floor plan types. So we needed to be able to utilize Archibus at its best. We needed to be able to incorporate all of those drawings into the Archibus database. And to do that, it took a lot of effort and a lot of help from Fulton and from Ryan, and we also worked with another outside company to survey buildings that we did not have CAD files for, and took all of that and integrated the floor plans of all these buildings across the state into Archibus, which again supported that whole the database. So by utilizing the floor plan and assigning the floor plan to groups and rooms, we were able to see what kinds of building types, of room types that we have, whether it's an office, whether it's support, whether it's break rooms, whether it's bathrooms. So we were able to work through taking all, making sure we had CAD files on every facility and loaded into Archibus so that the database was up to date. We also utilized the Archibus groups in the floor plans to be able to assess rent. We do charge rent to certain affiliates, Southern Company, Southern Link, and we needed to be able to tell people what kind of square feet they had and charge them for it. But previous to Archibus, we were doing that in AutoCAD, but Archibus makes it a more cohesive look for reporting, just like what you saw with the maintenance. We were able to, the reporting is one of the biggest things, and to not have disjointed information so that it's all consistent. So that's where we started. And basically, we utilize, once we've got all those floor plans, and we are still, I laugh because, I'm still cleaning up drawings and making sure it looks like what we want it to look like. And the consistency is important. So when you start out going down this road, it is important to have everybody on board to understand what you're really trying to get to. Making sure you have consistent rooming, numbering systems, naming nomenclatures, those kinds of things. So now, once we've got the floor plans into the database, we use that because we've identified every space. We can utilize it for, how many break rooms do you have? What's your cleanable square feet? Because we specifically needed to know out of our buildings what is cleanable square feet. You can also, because of the way we're utilizing the database, you can identify what is usable square feet. So we use all that information for reporting metrics to support any kind of, if upper management needs to know what our square feet is or what our rentable square feet is, what we lease out. So we're able to utilize the database to be able to run the various reports, just like maintenance does for their work request. We also have more recently utilized there's a project management module, and because Property Services does the construction arm, we utilize the project management piece of Archibus to manage capital projects, basically timelines. We do a more streamlined version use of that module, but it helps us to keep timelines, what project managers are working on, what jobs, and then what's the budget, and then what is the total expenditure to date. So again, more for reporting measures for management and upper management. And the next two slides are just examples of what our floor plans, what it looks like once you get them input that information into Archibus. This is a fourth floor of corporate, and this particular floor is a conference center. So on this floor, you see it's non-occupiable, and for our purposes, we consider it non-occupiable because it is the conference floor. Employees don't work there. They go and have meetings there. So we label that square feet as non-occupiable so that it doesn't show up in any of our reporting, because that's just the way we view that space for that floor. And then there's one more floor plan. So this is the south building, and this shows you how Archibus, how the color coding works once you've assigned the various divisions. We've got Alabama Power, we've got Southern Company, and then we've got Core. So by identifying the space like it is here, Core, that 11,576 square feet, gets pulled out of your reporting because that's Core. You can't use it. You can't put anybody in there because it's mechanical or elevators. So what you're looking at is the 16,000 for Alabama Power and the 11,000 for Southern Company, and that 11,000 for Southern Company, somebody pays rent on that. So it really does help us for reporting and for keeping up with how much space we've got, so that if you get a request, we also are able to keep up. I've got a number that I use if space is vacant. So if somebody, a department needs space, I can run a quick report and show what's vacant and that kind of thing. So Fulton and Ryan have been a great help and have definitely helped us get our drawings in one cohesive location so we can keep up with what we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan now to finish up.
All right, hi everybody. Yeah, my name is Ryan Tinsley, and I'm the lead developer for the Alabama Power implementation. So I'm going to cover some of the challenges and how we worked through those along the way over these 8 or 9 years it's been. Angela did touch on a few of these as she went, but the first challenge was disjointed point solutions. So we had different software for space and work management, and there's also very large paper use. So most of the work orders were just being printed out and handed over to every tech. So there were many file cabinets when we first started, full of paper. The second challenge was that the divisions, which is that's how they have their state split up into regions. A lot of the divisions, or the regions outside of corporate, were running a different process. So mostly it was just a manual telephone or email requests, while there was something more established going on at the corporate campus. Then we also had the challenge of maintaining end user accounts. So in order for somebody to log in, once Archibus was running, in order for somebody to log in and make a request, we had to maintain a user account for each person. And as people come and go, that gets hard to manage. So one of the things we had to work through was figuring out a more streamlined approach to that. And then finally, the missing incomplete building data. So data was stored in many different places, as Angela mentioned, SharePoint, some Access databases, and then just everybody's random spreadsheets where they were kind of tracking their own things. So to get through some of these, what we did was, well, first is use Archibus, of course, to integrate these different point solutions into one software. So we have space as the core of Archibus, and then we've added on the maintenance applications, which are able to leverage all the space data that's in there for using maintenance. So you're able to select rooms from that same inventory. You're able to see where things are happening on floor plans. All of that is available because you have one solution that can offer a wider range of capabilities. Also, moving into Archibus reduced the paper use. It doesn't completely eliminate it, but it definitely has made an impact on that. There's no longer a need to print every single thing. It's just as needed. Then they deployed a common process for the whole state. So instead of having each region, each division doing their having their own set of dispatchers, they have a centralized dispatch at corporate called the Building Operations Center, the BOC, and that everything funnels through there. So they're able to distribute that work. The team of them that work there are able to receive calls and then distribute that work for the entire state now. To get past having to maintain all of those user logins, we moved to the portal style login. So basically what she showed you with that, what they call the web portal, is a link that we set up so that it will automatically bring you into Archibus as a guest right to that screen that you want to get to. And then they have an automatic feed for their employees. So all the list of employees is in there, but they don't have to maintain any sort of access rules. The person can just get in automatically. They can select themselves from the list of employees, and then they can make their request quickly. And then finally, we added a lot of additional fields. So one of the things we can do is tailor Archibus to the needs of the company. So for Alabama, they had a lot of other things that they wanted to track at the building level. And while a lot of things can be tracked out of the box, they had a set of other things that they wanted to track, some safety features, things regarding janitorial, the number of parking spaces, lots of different things that we added, so they can look at a building and see all of that data in one spot and get a pretty good picture of what they're looking at as far as how that building is functioning. So the next set of challenges were that we had multiple and inconsistent names for assets and locations. So there wasn't really a consistent naming nomenclature in place. So it was, one group may have called a building one thing and another called it a different name. And as you can guess, that gets a little confusing. They also only had one annual survey. So once a year they'd have a big survey, to kind of assess how they did. But the problem with that is by the time it comes out, things from the beginning of the year people have already forgotten about, both good and bad. So you're not really getting an accurate picture of how people are using and whether they're happy or dissatisfied with the service that they're getting. Then one of the challenges of moving to having the whole state doing the dispatching was that there are regional differences. So, even though we had unified the way that everything came in, you still have to account for some of the differences between how different parts of the state may operate. And then finally, IT security, which is of course becoming increasingly important in our day and age. So we've had to work through the challenges of making it as user-friendly as possible while also keeping it as secure as possible. So one of the things there was, I'll just skip to the solution for it, is where we have that landing page. So you saw on the previous slide where if you're outside the network, you get a landing page, and that was one of the compromises made so that we could make sure that their systems were secure and that their IT security was comfortable with that. So as far as the other solutions, to get past those multiple names and inconsistent naming conventions, we standardized all that. So especially as they brought on a new module, we'd gather together all of those separate spreadsheets, get them in one place, and then we had several sessions of sitting down and coming up with a nomenclature to use, so that when you look at a particular asset, even just from the name, you can tell exactly what it is and where it is, and what it's for. Or you can at least have a very good idea of that just by looking at how it's named. And then instead of those annual surveys, as Angela showed, now one comes out at the end of every time a work request is completed. It'll automatically send out that survey so they get more real-time feedback where they can actually do something about it quickly. And it gives more opportunity for people to tell them the good things too that are fresh on their mind. And then for the BOC, you know, working through those regional differences, I know Angela did a lot of training with them, and some of that's just a learning process of working through that. And then, as needed, we would tweak how things are routed so that we were still maintaining efficiencies that maybe a certain location had, and not you know, overwhelming with extra email. And you know, that's one of the nice things about Archibus, is that especially for maintenance, that you can really tweak how things are routed and make it specific to the location as well, so that you know, certain team may like to work with a lot of email coming to them and another may not, or they may want it to, you know, they may not need to do an approval, but one place does. So all of that can be accounted for. And then, as I mentioned, with the IT security, we were able to get that web portal up and running and have it easily accessible for everybody that's, you know, in an office, and then have an easy way of telling them where to go if they're outside the office and they can't access it physically. They can still quickly see that phone number and call in whatever the need is. So I think I'll pass it back to Jeff.
I think that will wrap up our presentation for today. So thank you all for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful day.